Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Today, I want to talk to you briefly about BetterHelp. I am happy to announce that BetterHelp is a sponsor of this podcast. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional counselor. Listen, this is not a crisis line, nor is it self help, but it is professional counseling done securely online from the comfort of your own home. This service is available for clients worldwide, and you can even express your desire for a Christian therapist. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor and receive timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great matches, and they make it super easy to change counselors if needed. It is very affordable and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living your life happier today. So feel free to visit betterhelp.com to read testimonials. That's better, HELP, and join the over 500,000 people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. I have great news for you. Because you are a listener of this podcast, Empowered to Empower You, you get 10% off your first month. That's right. You get 10% off your first month, but you have to visit the link at https:// betterhelp.com/bewindi. I'll make sure to put this in the show notes. Okay, let's get to the show. Empowered to Empower You podcast is about all things Jesus Christ, mental health, anything to help you change your mindset so that you have the right perspective and become the better version of yourself. And I want that for you. I am your host, Bewindibobb. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, y'all. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? So good to be here again. I have missed y'all. Did y'all miss me? I have missed y'all. All right. So if this is your first time joining the podcast, welcome everyone. I just have to share my whys for this podcast. By the time people listen to these episodes, I desire for someone to give his or her life to Jesus, get closer to God, read his or her Bible more, increase prayer life to increase faith, engage in further development, even starting especially by starting therapy, or just engaging in your own personal development. And I want you to know that just because I serve as a licensed clinical social worker and provide therapy, this podcast cannot be a replacement to therapy. I don't want you to tell me that Miss Bewindi or Bewindi, I receive therapy by listening to your podcast. No, ma'am. No, sir. That's not okay. So hopefully it is a great addition to everything else that you're doing. Okay? Whether that's reading or your faith or whatever. So, hey, y'all, have you listened to episode number 45 entitled, How Do You Respond When Your Faith is Tested? This is a relevant message for this time. So you've got to listen. If you have listened and you're sharing this podcast to everyone or people that you know, I really appreciate you. I know for me, it encourages me. I listen to my own podcast, so it encourages me for sure. I want to apologize. So last time when I was recording, I was trying to do something different, and I was playing a song. I kind of, got tempted to have a song. There's a way that you can connect a song to play before the episode, and so I had the song "The Blessing" playing. But then when I looked, the episode would have only been available on Spotify, and it would not have been available on my other platform. So I deleted it off of Spotify, and I just kind of went back to my regular intro song the intro music that you hear. So I apologize that if you listen to episode 45, I made mention to you may have heard The Blessing right before, but you didn't hear it because I removed it, because I did not realize that if I did that, it would only be available on Spotify. And it was pretty cool, but it would be nice to play a song before the episode, but it's all good in my hood. So just wanted to apologize to you about that. Just a little bit of glitch, but it's okay because I'm learning my way through these podcasts. So, anywho, thank you so much for, again, sharing the podcast. If you have not posted a review, would you do that on whatever platform that you listen to the podcast? Anchor has a way for you to leave a voice message. Feel free to play with that. I am so thankful that God is a sustainer. Okay, I know that a lot of people can attest to that. There's a bunch of you I know for sure that's praying for me. Thank you so much. It is always needed, and I pray for you that God blesses you, that you are encouraged. And also pray for listeners. Pray for just pray for listeners of this podcast. Those of you who really appreciate the power of prayer, add that to your prayer list. The listeners of this podcast, God is touching so many people. There are so many people who need a touch from God right now. They need their eyes to be open. They need, and I'm talking about their spiritual eyes to be open. There's so many people that just need a touch, that need provision, that need a job, that need resources, that need peace, sleep at night, healing, salvation, you name it. And so I just ask you to join me in praying for people who just need to experience the love of God, especially in this difficult time and difficult days that we're living. All right. Thank you so much for doing that. So in my work with clients, as I've mentioned before, I serve professionals. I love what I do, y'all. I really, really do. I thank God for positioning me to for positioning me to be a therapist. Sometimes I sit in my chair and I look at myself and I'm like, God, you got me as a therapist? Like, for real? Like me? But I just thank God for positioning me to be doing the work that I do for such a time as this. I really believe He has called me to be the Esther in my realm. I thank God for that. So I serve professionals and young adults who are struggling with emotional conflicts, including but not limited to unhappiness, anxiety, depression, some type of dissatisfaction. And most of these individuals, I have a lot of people who come to me who believe in Jesus Christ, who believe in the Word. And so that's why I offer Christ-centered counseling if someone asks. And maybe one day I'll talk about that specifically, but I do offer that. It doesn't mean that all my clients are Christians. And some clients have some really, different beliefs, but I don't open that door unless they do. But I am so honored to say that I have a lot of people who have faith as an anchor and faith as a protective factor in their life. But, Christian or not, one of the things that I've seen that shows up so frequently for my clients, and it impacts everything else in their lives, is boundaries or the lack thereof. Listen, when we don't have boundaries set up in our lives, then we don't live in balance. We don't live life in balance. I just want you to chew on that for a second. So, and while you're chewing on that, welcome to episode number 46, Balance and Boundaries. So I'm going to ask a series of questions, and hopefully you relate to it or you know someone who relates to it. And I love to invite you to engage in reflection. So hopefully there will be something from this episode that you'll be able to take into your journal or your book or just some quiet time and really reflect on these questions. Do you know someone who says yes to everything and everyone? I mean, this person overextends him or herself, and if he or she says no, then guilt visits him or her. Do you know someone who says, I have no time to do anything? And they say that most of the time. I mean, everything that's offered to them, girl, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this. I want to do this, but I don't have time. Do you know someone, and let me just add to that too. Most times people say two things that keep them stuck where they are. I don't have time, or I don't have money. Do you know someone who's constantly overwhelmed and feels miserable all the time, or most of the time? Do you know someone who agrees to do things or go places knowing that he or she does not want to do it? someone who is in a friend group and they feel off, they feel awkward about being there, but yet they're staying in that activity. Do you know someone who overworks and feels obligated to do more and more and more to feel validated? Do you know someone who does not ask for what they need or want and does not show up for himself or herself? Do you know someone who is in relationships but feel very unhappy because she is compromising her standards and dumbing herself down to please the other person? I'm sure you know someone who falls in any of those categories, or if not all of those categories. And again, perhaps it may be you. And if you did, guess what? All of these scenarios have one thing in common, and that is the lack of boundaries and consequentially, the lack of balance. See, here's the thing. The first person who ever created boundaries is God. Yep, Yahweh, the Lord. That's right. You know, he told Adam and Eve that this is your place. I'm just paraphrasing. This is your place, the garden. You tend to it, Adam. You dominate. You name the animals. I'm going to give you a woman, and you love her. Y'all do whatever but don't touch or eat out of this tree over there, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was a boundary. And God gives us boundaries not to restrict us from enjoying lives, but to protect us. We have freedom, right? And once Adam and Eve, most of you know the story. If you don't know anything else, you know the story. Most of you do. That once Adam and Eve violated the boundary, in other words, once they disobeyed, that's when hell broke loose. And that was the introduction of sin and a major downfall in everything in our earth. Everything failed as a result of that. I know this was a big pill to swallow, but I just had to share that really quickly. So what is a boundary, y'all? What is a boundary? See, a boundary is a parameter, a border to keep things out and to keep things inside. And according to Dr. Henry Cloud, which is one of my favorite books to read, Boundaries, and he has several books. He has Boundaries with Dating. He has a lot of books, but he's one of my favorite authors. He says a boundary is compared to a fence. It clearly defines that this is my property. This is where it begins, and this is what I am responsible for, and this is what I focus on. Here's the thing. Some examples of physical boundaries in addition to fences are signs like do not disturb signs or posters, right? Or whatever is used to make the message clear that you stay out, this is mine, or don't touch this, or don't do this. See, according to Dr. Henry Cloud, boundaries define what is me and what is not me, what is mine and what is not mine, what I have control of and what I don't. But can I tell you a secret? We do not have control over others. We don't have control over how they think and what they think or their perspectives, like whether they like or what they don't, whether they will support you or whether they will not. We cannot control. And I've even heard people say, well, setting boundaries is not, it's hard, or it's not Christ-like, or it's selfish. There's so many distorted narratives around that. We cannot control what people think. The moment that we allow ourselves to think that we can control others, then we make room for an invader or an intruder called overwhelm or stress. Anytime a client has walked into my office, or in this case, my virtual office, and I hear the overwhelm, I already know that there's a boundary that's been violated. I already know that before they even open their mouths, before I even begin to explore, that somewhere in their lives in the last 2 weeks or the last 3 weeks or the last month since I've seen them last, that somewhere they have overcommitted themselves, overextended themselves, allowed something to come into their space, allowed something to disrupt their peace or their sleep or their finances or their time. They have allowed something else to violate their boundaries. They have not set boundaries, or they haven't had boundaries in place. I already know, because overwhelm and stress is a huge sign that there needs to be a boundary set. So I don't plan this podcast to be long, but I certainly want to give you something to think about. As you know, I love to have you engage in reflection, right? Have you ever felt like you need some balance in your life? And what if I told you that boundaries are so important to your mental health and how you take care of yourself? When we overextend ourselves, then we position ourselves for being depleted, as well as experience things such as burnout and compassion fatigue. There are times when we need to say this amazing, powerful 2-letter word called no. No. Say it with me. No. And the last time I checked, the word no has not taken anyone out. Okay, but here's the thing. Some people are saying, I cannot say no. Oh, it's hard to say no. I hear you. I've had clients say the same thing to me. And I use the opportunity to challenge the mindset and help them to restructure their thinking patterns. And I want to help you restructure yours by practicing something. Are you ready? So there are some things that before you say yes, I want you to ask yourself, what is my yes going to cost me? Will it cost me my peace? Will it cost me my joy? If I say yes this time, will it cost me my rest? Will it cost me my sleep? Will it cost me spending time with my husband or my wife, if you're a man listening? Will it cost me my family? Will it cost me spending time with my child? Will it cost me my time or my resources? Will it cost? What will it cost me? If I say yes to this engagement, this person, this thing, where will there be a return on investment? Will it benefit me in any way? And I don't say that you indicate selfishness at all. Because let me just say this, self-care is not selfish. You've probably heard that before. I do want you to evaluate how you're saying yes every time has impacted you. Now, I'm not talking about when God says, hey, I want you to do this, or when you know that this is what you're supposed to do. But I want you, especially if you related to any of those aforementioned scenarios, are you dealing with the stress that has impacted your total health? Are you taking time to evaluate, why am I having all these headaches? Why am I not sleeping well at night? Why am I worrying all day? I'm consumed with things that I cannot control. I'm overcommitting myself. Why am I always jumping in to rescue folks? Jumping in to rescue people? You have the power to teach people how to treat you. And when you ask yourself, where do I have boundaries in my life? Is it financial? Am I always feeling like I'm broke because I keep spending money on this? Or I keep giving my money to here, or whatever the case may be? Is it a time? Is there a time when you unplug from social media or news or just have uninterrupted focused reading time? Is it possible that someone or always has access to your time? Here's the thing, when we don't have boundaries, people dictate what happens with our time. I want you to think about this and assess the cost of your yes. I assure you that when you do that, you'll be able to assess where you can have balance in your life. I had someone tell me this, that COVID taught me how to set boundaries. Let me say that again. I had someone say to me, COVID taught me how to set boundaries. Isn't that profound? That a pandemic showed that person where they had no boundaries. They were just doing, going and doing for everybody. And it showed them, wait a second, I need to take care of my health. I need to set some boundaries in place. I need to create some structure. I need to create some routines in my life. And even though COVID did disrupt patterns, but you have the capacity and the power to recreate those routines in your life, right? This person realized how much she was letting other people dictate her schedule and how overwhelmed she had been. Think about that. I want to give you another strategy before I leave today. When faced with those situations, whether a family member who knows that you will be the one to say yes, they keep coming to you because they know that you are the coworker, you're the one that is going to do it. Here's some things that I want you to practice. And let me just add one more thing. Just because you can does not always mean you should. Just because you can does not mean you should. Just because you have a bubbly personality does not mean that you should be the greeter or the event planner. You don't even like organizing events, but the person knows you and they're like, oh, so and so can do it because they have a bubbly personality. Does not mean you should. Okay? You may not have the capacity to do anything else. So here's something I want you to practice if this relates to you. I want to give you an acronym, but the word is pause. P stands for pace yourself. Take your time before answering. P stands for pace yourself. Take your time before answering. Okay? So some things that you might be able to say is, let me think about that, or I'll get back to you, or maybe you, especially if you don't feel comfortable saying no right away, or that feels kind of like inauthentic to you, take some time, pace yourself, right? So let me think about that, or when do you need to know by? Okay, I'll get back to you by 5 o'clock. Pace yourself. Take some time before answering. A, assess. Ask more information. What do you need? What is the favor? Tell me more. Give me some more information, right? You, take time to understand what is asked of you, or listen to understand and not to be understood. S, self-care. Breathe if you have to. Remember your limits. Ask for help. Delegate. Okay? E, examine the costs. And if applicable, excuse yourself by saying, I cannot do that. I don't have the capacity to handle that right now. And say no without excuses. Say no without you don't owe anybody an excuse. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't owe anybody an explanation. Say that with me. I don't owe an explanation. You don't owe an explanation. I think many times we feel like we have to give, like we're saying I can't do that. I mean, I have all this stuff going on right now, and ain't nobody ask you for that. Like, I cannot do that right now. I'm not able to do that right now, but here's somewhere I think that may be able to help you. Maybe offer them an alternative. Maybe offer them somebody, hey, have you tried so-and-so? Give them some information. Send them to the right direction. If you know that you don't have the capacity to add one more thing on your plate, why are you saying yes? Let me say this. Again, I'm going to say it again, okay? You do not have to apologize for saying no. Number 1. Number 2, you do not owe an explanation for saying no. Number 3, you can say no. So I want you to repeat that. Feel free to rewind this podcast. It's a beautiful thing about the podcast. You can rewind it. You can repeat it. You can go back to it, whatever you need to do. I want you to turn that over into your head, especially if you're struggling with boundaries. If you notice that you're so overwhelmed, you have extended yourself, you feel so depleted, you feel like people are just taking. And when you look around you in relationships that are not reciprocal, you're the one that's giving. You're doing all the baking. You're doing all the giving. You're using your talents. Every single thing. You're just giving. And you're tired. And you have nothing else to give. And you've heard me say this before. You've probably heard other people say, you cannot give out of an empty cup. You cannot pour out of an empty cup. So please hear me. This is only when it applies to based on the cost. I don't want you to leave this podcast with a takeaway that Bewindi said, just say no to everything. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't lie on me. Please don't. Okay? But if you relate to anything I just said, I just hope that these strategies, they sound simple. They're not really this use. Sometimes it's the simple things that help to make a big impact. Okay? It's simple things to just take your time and know that you can assess your situation and you can set boundaries so that you can have some balance in your life and take care of yourself. We have to be better stewards of ourselves, our physical health, our financial health, our emotional health. We have to be better stewards, and we need boundaries to do that. All right? So I hope this was helpful to you, because I want you to live your best life. And God wants you to prosper. He wants that for you too. So let me know if this helped you. Let me know how it helped you. You can email me at bewindibobb@empoweredtoempoweryou.com, or you can connect with me on IG and send me a message, empowered2serve. I will put that in the show notes. Will you let me know if this helped you today? It's just very simple, but I want the best for you, because a lot of people are struggling with boundaries and they don't have any balance in their lives. And I know that's harder. It's harder said than done, especially some of you work in a culture that expects you to say yes to everything. So when, some of you are in environments like your home, your family environment, that really everyone expects you to say yes. Everyone expects you to be the caretaker. So I really encourage you to take a look at your life, because ultimately you're responsible for your health. You're responsible for making decisions to you have to really say, okay, wait a second, something has to give here. If I'm expected to say yes every time, then what about my health? What about my mind? What about my sleep? So I'm just inviting you to just reflect. I'm not giving you the solution to say this is what you do in every situation. I'm just inviting you to reflect, and maybe something I said, you can maybe look at where you can maneuver, or where you can identify or add to your life. Okay? But at least give yourself permission to take a look at, do I really have balance in my life? Am I really setting the appropriate boundaries in my life? All right? So, this is Bewindi Bobb. May this add value to your life, encourage your heart, nourish your soul, and bless your spirit. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.